You know all the classic fairy tales, right? The Little Mermaid, The Ugly Duckling, The Emperor's New Clothes. They're unforgettable. But what if I told you that the most incredible fairy tale of all wasn't just written by Hans Christian Andersen, but was actually lived by him? Seriously, his own life is this unbelievable story of impossible odds, just brutal rejection, and in the end, this amazing triumph.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. This wasn't some idea that people came up with after he was famous. Andersen himself saw his life this way. He actually wrote these very words, believing his story was authored by a loving God, just like a perfect fairy tale. So let's dive into his life, not as a boring biography, but as the fantastical story he really believed he was living.
All right, so here we go. To really get the magic in his stories, to truly understand them, we have to start by stepping into the world he came from. And believe me, it was harsh and pretty far from magical.
Just look at this. This gives you a sense of the kind of poverty we're talking about. Andersen was born in 1805, and his whole family lived in this single, tiny room, which was almost completely taken up by his dad's shoemaking bench. And here's a truly grim detail for you. His very first bed, his father built it for him out of the leftover wooden frame from a nobleman's coffin. Wow. It's pretty hard to imagine a more sobering start to life, right?
So this really difficult beginning forged these two separate worlds that Andersen lived in his whole childhood. You had the grim reality of his day-to-day life, and then you had this incredibly rich, vibrant world that he built entirely inside his own head.
And this, right here, just shows that contrast perfectly. On one side, his reality was this tiny, cramped room. His mom was haunted by the fact that she had to beg as a kid, and his dad was just heartbroken over never getting an education. But his imagination? Well, that was a whole other story. It was a world where pictures covered the walls, where he had a little garden on the roof and a chest of soil, where he built his own puppet theater, and where he got lost in the fantastic Arabian tales his dad would read to him.
And this was a huge moment. His father saw a student from the local grammar school, saw his books, and in that moment of pure pain and regret, Andersen saw his own destiny. His father's unfulfilled dream basically became the fuel for his own ambition to escape poverty and become something more.
After his father died, that ambition turned into an actual plan, and it was a pretty wild one. At just 14 years old, he decided he was going to leave home, travel to the capital city, Copenhagen, and find his fortune on the stage.
So, what kind of fortune did he have to start this grand adventure? A family inheritance, maybe? Some savings tucked away? Nope. He had exactly 13 riksdaler. That's it. Barely anything to start a new life in a massive, intimidating city.
What's truly amazing here is his almost delusional self-belief. When his worried mom asked him, what are you even going to do there? His answer wasn't, I'll find work or I'll try my best. It was just, I will become famous. He was already totally convinced that all this hardship was just the first chapter in the epic story of a great man.
But of course, Copenhagen wasn't exactly waiting with the red carpet. The city met this tall, awkward boy from the countryside with a series of really swift and brutal rejections.
So his first move was to go see the prima ballerina of the Royal Theatre. He asks for her help, and to show off his talent, he takes off his boots, uses his big hat as a tambourine, and just starts singing and dancing so wildly that she thought he was completely insane and had him thrown out immediately.
Okay, next up he goes to the manager of the theater. The manager takes one look at his lanky frame and just dismisses him with a single, crushing critique. He was, and I quote, too thin for the theater. When Andersen promised he'd get fat if they just give him a salary, he was basically told to get lost.
And his trials weren't just professional, they were personal. He was forced to get a job in a factory, and the other workers just mocked him for his high voice and gentle personality. In one really cruel moment, they held him down to see if he was a girl, just a moment of profound humiliation that sent him running back to his mother, vowing never to return.
And this is where the fairy tale part really kicks in. Just as he was on the verge of giving up, a series of chance encounters, call it fate, call it luck, whatever you want, changed everything. The desperate, strange boy finally found people who saw a little spark in him.
And that spark led to something called patronage. In a last-ditch effort, he went to the home of Sibony, the director of the Academy of Music. He completely broke down in tears while telling his story and singing for Sibony's dinner guests. And they were so moved by his raw talent and passion, these influential men, especially a powerful guy named Counselor Colin, they decided to take him under their wing. And as you can see from this timeline, this was not an overnight success story. Not at all.
It took 3 long years of struggle before Counselor Collins stepped in. Then, another year after that, the king himself gave him the money for an education. This was a slow, difficult, 9-year journey from the day he arrived with nothing in 1819 to finally publishing his first real book in 1828.
And that is the key thing to remember here. His hard-won success, that wasn't the happy ending. It was just the end of the beginning. He had survived all the trials. He'd found his patrons, he'd gotten his education. Now, finally, he could begin the work that would make him immortal, writing the fairy tales we all know and love today.
So I'll just leave you with this one final thought. The next time you read The Ugly Duckling, the story of that strange-looking bird who's mocked and outcast and humiliated, and who endures this terrible winter of suffering before finding out he's actually a beautiful swan, just ask yourself, was he really writing about a duck, or was he writing about himself?